There is a distinct texture to the modern experience of time. It is not marked by the jagged edges of survival or the erratic rhythms of the weather. It is marked, instead, by a pervasive smoothness, a seamless continuity where 1 hour slides indistinguishably into the next. Consider the room you are in. The temperature is likely regulated, hovering within a narrow band of acceptability, neither demanding you to shiver nor to sweat. The light is artificial, steady, and shadowless. If you are hungry, food is available without the precursor of the hunt or the harvest. If you are bored, stimulation is available without the friction of travel or the vulnerability of interaction. There is a quiet hum to this existence. It is the sound of systems working exactly as they were designed to work. It is the sound of friction being removed from the surface of life. When we move through a world designed for convenience, we're moving through a world that has been engineered to anticipate our needs before we fully feel them. The door opens before we touch it. The algorithm suggests what we wish to see before we know we wish to see it. The path is cleared of obstacles, debris, and ambiguity. This state is not unpleasant. On the contrary, it is the definition of pleasantness. It is the absence of resistance. It is the removal of the gap between desire and acquisition. It is a state of near-perfect insulation. Yet in this insulation, there is a subtle alteration in the quality of the silence. It is not the silence of rest after exertion. It is the silence of suspension. The nervous system, which evolved over millions of years to navigate complex, high-stakes environments, now finds itself floating in a medium of perfect buoyancy. There is nothing to push against. The senses, once attuned to the crack of a twig or the shift in wind direction, now rest on smooth glass and high-resolution screens. The emotional palate, once required to process grief, terror, triumph, and awe, is now primarily occupied with mild annoyance, mild amusement, and mild satisfaction. We often mistake this smoothness for peace. We mistake the absence of external conflict for internal resolution. But if you observe closely, in the quiet moments between the consumption of content and the onset of sleep, there is a sensation that is difficult to name. It is not pain, it is not suffering, it is a feeling of thinness, a sense that the reality we are interacting with has lost its density. The world feels lighter, yet harder to grasp. The days feel faster, yet empty of landmarks. We are safe, we are comfortable, we are untouched. And in this untouched state, something vital, something structural begins to recede. To understand this recession, we must look away from the environment and look inward, toward the biological architecture that processes that environment. We must examine the mechanism of adaptive atrophy. Biology is governed by a ruthless economy of energy. The brain and the body are optimization engines designed to conserve resources. The principle is simple. What is not used is considered expensive waste. Muscle tissue that is not subjected to the stress of gravity or resistance is broken down. The body reclaims the protein, lowering its caloric requirements. This is not a malfunction, it is an adaptation to the environment. This principle of atrophy applies with equal ruthlessness to the psychological and cognitive structures. Depth, whether it is emotional depth, intellectual depth, or the depth of resilience, is not a static trait. It is a capacity maintained by resistance. It is the psychological equivalent of muscle mass. It exists only because the environment demands it. When an environment becomes perfectly comfortable, it ceases to demand high-resolution processing. It ceases to demand the ability to tolerate ambiguity, to delay gratification, or to synthesize complex, contradictory emotions. In a high-friction environment, the mind is constantly required to solve novel problems. It must navigate social nuances without a block button. It must endure physical discomfort without a thermostat. It must sit with boredom without a screen. These activities are stressors. They place a load on the psyche. In response to this load, the psyche maintains a certain density, a structural integrity capable of bearing weight. However, when comfort becomes the baseline, the load is removed. The mechanism of adaptive atrophy begins its work. The brain, sensing that the environment is predictable and safe, begins to prune the neural pathways associated with high stress tolerance and complex emotional regulation. It down-regulates the production of neurotransmitters required for acute focus and deep. This is not a sudden collapse. It is a slow, molecular dismantling of capacity. Consider the concept of the window of tolerance. This is the emotional zone in which a person can function effectively, aroused enough to be engaged, but not so aroused that they become overwhelmed. In a comfortable, low-friction life, the edges of this window begin to shrink. Because the individual is rarely pushed to the periphery of their tolerance, the periphery begins to contract toward the center. What was once a minor inconvenience begins to register as a significant threat. Even microscopic friction feels like violence. The dynamic range of the human experience compresses. Just as a camera lens that focuses only on objects 2 feet away eventually loses the mechanical ability to focus on the horizon, a mind that focuses only on immediate gratification loses the ability to focus on the distant, the difficult, or the profound. We begin to trade awe for amusement. We trade grief for mild sadness. We trade passion for preference. The consequence is a beige emotional landscape. We become spectators of life rather than participants, watching emotions through a pane of glass. When the psychological immune system is not exposed to failure, rejection, and physical hardship, it does not develop antibodies. The self becomes soft. A disagreement is no longer an exchange of ideas, it is perceived as an attack on one's safety. The comfortable mind constructs a fortress of solitude, surrounding itself with echo chambers and curated feeds to ensure nothing contradictory breaches the walls. But this safety is brittle. Because the individual has not built the structural integrity to withstand pressure, they live in a state of low-level anxiety. In a high-friction environment, the mind is constantly required to solve novel problems. It must navigate social nuances without a block button. It must endure physical discomfort without a thermostat. It must sit with boredom without a screen. These activities are stressors. They place a load on the psyche. In response to this load, the psyche maintains a certain density, a structural integrity capable of bearing weight. However, when comfort becomes the baseline, the load is removed. The mechanism of adaptive atrophy begins its work. The brain, sensing that the environment is predictable and safe, begins to prune the neural pathways associated with high stress tolerance and complex emotional regulation. It down-regulates the production of neurotransmitters required for acute focus and deep. The room remains as it was. The temperature has not changed. The light has not flickered. The systems that sustain this environment continue their silent, efficient operation. You are likely sitting or lying down as you hear this. The device you are using is functioning correctly. You are safe. The comfort you feel is real. The safety is real. But in the absence of winter, the trees do not grow deep roots. In the absence of hunger, the hunter does not sharpen his spear. The question hangs in the stillness, unanswered and unanswerable by any algorithm. What is the cost of a life that fits too well? The screen is bright, the air is still, the friction is gone, and you are here, floating in the center of it all, waiting for the next moment to slide effortlessly into place.